Congratulations on your selection of the Lineward L2 line layer, the ideal machine for all of your buried cable service needs. In this video, we'll be taking a closer look at maintenance and operations of the L2. To take us through standard maintenance procedures, let's go to Bob Ward of the Lineward Corporation.
Hi, I'm Bob Ward, and welcome to the Lineward Corporation's Maintenance and Operation video. Before we get into that, let's take a look at the extra parts you'll receive when you buy a new machine. The first, of course, being the most important, the owner's manual. You'll follow through the manual step by step, page for page. Also included will be a grease gun and a case of specially manufactured Lineward grease. You'll also receive two 61W blade lock springs and a 133W blade pin. Also included will be a 131-W ground runner, a 130-W ground runner spring, and a 45W block deflector. For those purchasing electric start, you'll receive a small battery charger. All these parts will be gone over in more detail as we go through the maintenance program. Before we get into the maintenance and operation of the machine itself, let's discuss some of the importance of maintenance. Number one, proper maintenance means your machine is going to run properly. That's going to make for a happy operator. Also, it's going to keep downtime to a minimum. It's going to cut operating costs. This is going to make for a happy owner. If the machine is running properly and you've got a happy operator, that means it's going to do a better job and your customer is going to be happy. As far as maintenance schedules, it's going to depend on the specific maintenance part of the unit. Some has to be done on a daily basis, some has to be done on an as-needed basis, some is on a scheduled basis. As we get into it in detail, we'll go over that with you. To begin our look at maintenance, let's look at the most important maintenance feature of all. There are only two grease fittings on the Lineward, but they do have to be greased each day. Those two grease fittings are located on the blade block assembly down in the middle of the casting here. Now let's look and see how we go about this. The first thing to do is to come behind the machine and shut off your inline brass toggle valve. When the machine is tipped backward, this will prevent the gas from flooding the carburetor, running out the air cleaner, and onto the customer's grass. You then tip the Lineward on its handlebars. Coming around to grease the two grease fittings, I notice on this machine they are not exposed above the casting here. In order to do that and expose both fittings, I very simply engage the main drive control here, which engages my belts, and engage the blade clutch to the in position. Of course, the engine is not running at this time. You then take the recoil starter, pull the rope, and as you can see, this will bring the blade block assembly to the top of its cycle. Once this is done, I can take a standard grease gun, again provided in your extra parts package, right on the two fittings, pump each fitting with 12 shots of grease, Lineward grease, each day. This is absolutely essential for warranty and the proper operation of our machine. Remember, proper daily greasing of the Lineward will lubricate, waterproof, and keep dirt and debris from entering the gear case. In addition, once your machine has been used in the field, before greasing, make sure you wipe off both fittings to prevent dirt from entering the bearings. Let's move on to the next very important maintenance feature, blade tension. As the front of your blade wears through normal use, we have to increase this tension. This is to keep the blade tight in the blade block assembly. To check tension, remove the tension rod, pull your blade pin, lower your blade down to your normal working depth. Take your index finger, push against the rod. The gap between the sidearm or tie assembly, right here, and the front of the tab on the handle assembly should be from 1/4 to 1 inch. If the gap is less than 1/4 of an inch, in other words, it comes down below the sidearm here, we have to increase tension. To do that, we remove the T-wrench from the side of the machine. Come around the front to the blade lock assembly. We loosen the locking nut on the set screw. Place the T-wrench in the set screw and turn it in against the 61W springs. This will increase the blade tension. Recheck the tension after you've turned it in. And again, you're looking for a gap of from 1/4 to 1 inch. Once you have the proper tension, come back to the blade lock assembly and, again, retighten the locking nut. Now this is important. If you fail to tighten the locking nut, the set screw will vibrate out. You'll either be lost in the field or you'll be running without blade tension. While we're down here, let's take a look at the two 61W blade lock springs right here. These are a special steel which sit between the set screw and the leading edge of the blade. Now, those springs are steel, they will fatigue, they will rust, and they're liable to break. When that happens, they need to be replaced. When one spring breaks, take both of these springs, throw them away, and place 2 new ones in there. Also, check your cotter pin, make sure your cotter pin is in place here. That keeps your handle in the proper position. Check your other hardware, make sure everything's tight. Remember, improper blade tension is going to allow the blade to beat back and forth inside the block. It's going to be evident by a rattling noise and excessive wear. And this is going to lead to a very expensive repair. Proper blade tension, on the other hand, keeps that blade tight. The whole unit will work as one. This is what you're looking for. Take the time to check this out. It doesn't have to be done on a daily basis, but you do have to do it on an as-needed basis. Okay, now let's take a look at replacing some of your normal wear items. The first being the ground runner. This would be the 131W plastic ground runner. Simply held on by 2 screws. Just take your normal straight screwdriver, remove both screws from the ground runner bracket, remove the ground runner, check your ground runner spring. This is the 130W. Check for cracks. Normally the spring will outlast the plastic 2 or 3 to 1. Once your ground runner is wore, discard it, put on a new one. Now when you replace the ground runner, make sure that the bend is always down. This is the portion that catches the bumper, so when you're backing the machine up, it doesn't pull out and through. Retighten the screws. Take your ground runner, again, making sure the bend faces down, and insert above the bumper and between the casting. Always make sure that your ground runner bracket is loose enough that it swivels. The 2 bolts and nuts on each side do not get tightened. Okay, now let's take a look at replacing the 45W deflector. In order to do that, we need to remove the blade. So let's tip the machine forward. Release your ground runner here so it doesn't interfere with the blade. Release your tension rod and pin. Insert the pin in the eye, the wire guide, that way it won't get lost. Drop your blade down. Now get a good position, put 1 foot between the track and the engine, Right hand up here, grab it by the bumper here, and turn from right to left. Always opposite the recoil side. Should you push the machine the opposite way, you're going to do damage to the recoil or the shroud. Slide the blade out the bottom, bring the blade or the machine back down. Okay, now that we've taken the blade out of the machine, let's remove the 45W. 4 screws hold it to the bottom of the blade block. Again, a simple screwdriver. The deflector comes off. Note that you have a bend in the deflector. The bend must go down and it goes forward. Doesn't go up this way, but down this way. If the deflector is broken or worn, replace it. Simply screw it back under to the block. And you're all set. Now the purpose of both the ground runner and the deflector is to deflect debris away from this unit. It's also to absorb abrasion, to keep the abrasion off the metal parts. And the purpose of the ground runner, in order to keep your turf in place. This is going to reduce your ground restoration, going to save you money. Now that your deflector is in place, tip the machine, again, right to left. Reinsert your blade. Ground runner up there between the bumper and the casting. Let the machine down, and then repin your blade in the transport position. Let's say a few words about the tracks and wheels. First of all, we advise keeping this area as clean as possible. Keep your scraper adjusted properly between the wheels, and keep your wear pads in good order. This is going to extend the life of both your wheels and tracks. And the first sign that your tracks are going to need replacement is when the wheels start to spin excessively inside the tracks. At that time, you need to remove the old tracks and replace them with new. This will be dependent upon your ground conditions and the use of your machine. Okay, replacing old tracks with new should require the use of about a 4 or 5 pound hammer. If you find that you can bump the tracks on with both hands and they're loose fitting, you may have to replace the wheels. Therefore, if you replace the tracks when they need to be, you can avoid the needed expense or the added expense of replacing the wheels. Let's discuss the main drive control handle and the AP53 drive belts. Proper tension for the drive belts will be when the main drive control handle comes up and snaps in place. New belts, as they wear, will stretch. When they stretch, we need to take out belt tension. That's done without having to remove the shroud or belt guard, and by coming down here into the clevis yoke at the end of the main drive control rod. Okay, the first thing we want to do to increase belt tension is engage the main drive control. Down to the end of the rod, we have a lock nut above the clevis yoke. Take a 9/16 inch wrench, loosen the nut, and bring it up the rod. Come back up to the main drive control handle and remove the 114W shoulder bolts. And to increase tension, simply turn the rod in clockwise a couple of turns. Reinsert the shoulder bolts. And check your tension. Okay, if the tension's okay, retighten your shoulder bolts. And go down, make sure you retighten the nut. Remember to take it out of gear, and you're done. The next area of maintenance I'd like to cover is the gear lube. First of all, before you check gear lube, you have to make sure your machine is level. This here is your vent and fill plug only. The capacity of the gear case is 2 quarts of 90 weight gear lube, multi-purpose. Your check plug is down here between the bumper and the casting. In order to check the level of the gear case, keep your machine level, remove this plug. The oil should just come up to the threads. Do not overfill. Your oil is okay, or if you need to add oil, you can come up here to the fill plug. Remove this plug and add the oil as needed. Now that we've covered gear lube, let's move on to the engine. The new machines are equipped with the Magnum. Older machines will have the K341 series. On the Magnum, you have an automotive type dipstick to check your oil level. On the K series, you have to go down below the gas tank to the front of the engine for a plug type dipstick down there. The Magnum's capacity for oil is 2.25 quarts. On the K series, it will be 2.0 quarts. To change engine oil, both engines have a removable plug which you gain access through the motor mount hole in front. Change the oil after the first 5 operating hours. Consult your owner's manual for oil intervals after that. Another important thing to change is your air cleaner. You want to keep this clean. In extremely dusty or dirty conditions, you're going to have to do this more often. Again, consult your owner's manual and change as needed. Now that we've discussed machine maintenance, let's discuss blade maintenance. A new blade will look like this. As the blade wears through normal use, it most likely will look like this. You notice the front point is worn back diagonally approximately 3/4 to 1 inch. This is the time to send it in for rebuild. This is an example of a blade that's gone beyond that and is non-repairable. As you can see, this is worn back well past 1 inch. We're already up into the chute area. The radius of the chute has a hole worn through. This blade is unsalvageable. This is a blade that's been rebuilt. Customer sent this in on time. As you can see, it looks just like a new one. The last thing I'd like to discuss about the blade is the fact it's going to need to be cleaned out from time to time. In order to do that, we use the clean-out rod located on the side of the machine. Okay, it's very important to keep the chute clean. You do this by inserting the rod, rotating the rod, making sure you get all the dirt out of the blade. Now that we've covered the general maintenance portion of our video, let's move on to actual startup and operation. The first thing we want to do is make sure our main drive control handle is disengaged. Make sure your throttle control is in the idle or all the way down position. Make sure the inline toggle valve and the fuel shutoff valve underneath the gas tank are both in the on position. Pull your choke all the way up and turn the key. Disengage the choke once the engine's running. Now, for those of you without electric start, the rest of the items remain the same. Pull your choke. You'll have to start it by pulling the recoil. What you want to do is pull it out about a good 8 to 10 inches. Then you make one nice strong pull and allow the rope to walk back in slowly. This will prevent the rope from entangling itself and bending the pulley inside. Now that we have the machine started, we need to move down and select our proper gear. Now, in order to do this, we can refer to the decal on the back. You have high, neutral, reverse, neutral, and low. The two neutrals are a safety feature so that the operator cannot shift from one gear into another. Now, these gears at times will not mesh. It may be necessary to rotate them a bit in order to get them to do this. You can accomplish this by either slightly engaging the belts, allowing the gears to turn, or by rocking the machine gently. If you have the L2, you want to select the range, high or low. This is done by sliding the gear shift out and into the proper hole. These are designated by your arrows. Low range, again a neutral, and then high range. While we're on the back here, let's also discuss the warning decal up here. This is a reminder for your operator to keep the machine greased daily, as we've discussed before, and also to replace the wear parts, which we also discussed earlier in the video. Okay, now that we have the engine started and we've selected our gear, it's time to move the machine. Bring your throttle control up approximately 1/4 to a half. Slowly, and I repeat again, slowly engage the belts. Bring it up to center, snap it in gear. Now I want to repeat to bring this in slowly. Treat it as a clutch in order to avoid any internal damage in the gearbox. Don't let your operator just bring it in and snap it. Once you have this engaged, adjust your RPM accordingly, and we're ready to go. Now that we've run through maintenance and startup, let's move on to actual operation.
Loading your line ward is made safe and simple using the line ward loading ramps and transport carrier. With your ramps in place, select a proper forward gear and load your machine with the throttle control reduced to idle. For safety, high gear is not recommended for loading or unloading your machine. Guide the line ward completely into the transport carrier, allowing the tracks to spin in place and shut the engine off. Leave all controls engaged. This will secure your machine in place during transport. After arriving at the job site, you should visually inspect the work area for other buried services, obstacles, and/or hazards. You can then determine the best route for the cable placement. It is advisable that you call your local underground utilities locating service before you start. Begin by digging a small starting and finishing hole, being careful in removing the sod so it can be set aside for replacement after completion of cable burial. are now ready to unload your line ward. After securing the ramps, disengage the main drive control and start the engine. Shift your machine into reverse gear while keeping the throttle reduced to idle. Engage the main drive control and slowly begin to back down the ramps. Never load or unload your line ward with the throttle control at high speed. As you proceed down the ramps, lift slightly upward on the handlebars to maintain machine balance. Always leave the main drive control handle engaged while loading or unloading your line ward to prevent machine runaway. After unloading, shift to high gear for transport to the job site. Here, we show our operator attaching the optional line ward reel carrier before proceeding to the starting hole. Back the machine up to the pedestal over the hole and reduce the throttle control to idle. At this time, for safety, select an appropriate forward gear. This will prevent accidental backing at startup. Engage the blade clutch and shut the engine off. Tip the machine forward. Never run the engine with the machine tipped. Lower the blade into the first hole. Cut the cable at an angle to ease entry into the blade chute. Thread the cable through the wire guide and into the blade. Lower the blade to desired depth, insert the blade pin, and engage the blade lock handle. Pull the cable through the blade, leaving enough length for installation and secure for burial. Return the line ward to a level position and start the engine. Set the throttle and engage the main drive control handle slowly, adjusting the throttle to conditions. Remember, adjusting your working speed by the proper selection of gearing as opposed to increased engine speed should allow the machine to operate in a smooth and efficient manner. As you approach the house, you should reduce the throttle speed and be prepared to disengage the main drive control handle in order to stop the machine at a close but safe distance from the house. Cut the engine speed to idle, shut the fuel toggle valve off, shift into reverse gear, again for safety, disengage the blade clutch, and shut the engine off. Carefully tip the line ward backwards. For safety and to prevent any damage, the machine should never be dropped on its handlebars. Raise the blade to the first hole and again pull the cable through the blade, allowing enough length for installation. Retract the blade to the transport position and tip the machine back to a level position. Turn on the fuel toggle valve, open the throttle slightly, and start the engine. Engage the main drive control and slowly and carefully back machine away from the house. The slightly raised turf can be almost completely flattened by running one of the tracks over the slit. If necessary, engaging the blade in the transport position only will increase the line ward's effectiveness, allowing it to perform as a tamper, with the oscillation of the blade producing the tamping effect. After the raised turf has been flattened, disengage the blade clutch before returning your machine to the truck. As we once again view our operator loading his line ward, note that he shifts to the proper forward gear and slowly engages the main drive control with the engine at low speed. Again, never disengage the main drive control when loading or unloading your machine. Also remember, after the line ward is in the transport carrier, shut the engine off, leaving the main drive control engaged and both the shift lever and range shift lever in gear. You can now backfill the starting and finishing holes, replace the sod, and rake over the completed job for a professional finish. Here we are displaying the line ward pull blade designed for pulling and poly pipe as shown here, as well as larger cable or wire. Burying pipe and or larger cable will again require a starting and finishing hole. Make the holes long enough so the pipe or cable can enter or exit easily without kinking. Position your line ward over the starting hole and reduce the throttle to idle. At this time, for safety, select a suitable forward gear appropriate for your ground conditions. Engage the blade clutch and shut the engine off. Tip the machine forward. Release the ground runner from the rear bumper and lower the blade to your desired working depth. Insert the blade pin and engage the blade lock handle. Return the ground runner to its operating position. Insert a steel grip using a propane torch to heat and expand the pipe for easy insertion of the grip. Line ward steel grips are available in various sizes according to your needs. Also available are Chinese finger type pulling grips. Always insert the grip fully into the pipe. After the grip has been inserted, you can now connect it to the blade with a quick connect link. For those burying large cable or wire, it will be necessary to use the Chinese finger type pulling grip. Being that many grips are available, choose one that will best fit your needs. Re-level your machine and start the engine. Set the throttle at about 1/3 speed and engage the main drive control slowly. Increase your engine speed as needed. When pulling in pipe or cable, having a helper to assist in uncoiling and guiding the pipe or cable will help safeguard against kinkage. It will also be beneficial to keep the run as straight as possible to reduce the drag in order to allow for maximum pulling distance. Gradual turns are possible as shown here. However, you must remember that due to the increased drag caused by these turns, your pulling distance may be reduced. When you've reached the termination point, continue pulling until desired length of pipe or cable is exposed. Stop the machine, turn the engine off, and tip your line ward forward. The pipe or cable can now be removed from the grip and the job completed as we previously outlined in our wire burying segment. This segment will cover both pre-ripping and root cutting. This is our 143W ripper blade. This blade should be used to pre-cut gravel driveways and areas with excessive rock or excessive amounts of junk fill. Pre-ripping also will allow greater burying depths in adverse ground conditions. The 158W root blade can be used to saw through tree roots when they present a problem in burying either cable or pipe. For this demonstration, once we have pre-ripped our driveway, we will then insert our feed blade to directly bury the cable. Remember, using the ripper blade will prevent damage to the more expensive feed or pull blade and will also prevent damage to the cable or pipe being buried. We must now prepare to pre-rip through this gravel driveway in order to place our buried cable. To begin, our operator will remove his feed blade and insert his ripper blade. Remember to tip your machine from right to left as shown here. Select your blade depth. For best results, it is advisable to make 2 passes. Your first pass being approximately 1/2 the total burying depth desired. For our purposes, the first pass will be at 5 inches in depth, with our second pass at 9. Shift your machine into its lowest possible forward gear and engage your blade clutch. Start your engine and adjust your throttle to conditions. After reaching the opposite side of the driveway, turn your line ward around and shut the engine off. Tip the machine forward and lower the ripper blade. The blade should now be at your desired depth and you can now continue. After completing the return pass, remove your ripper blade and install your feed blade. Insert the cable and proceed to bury the cable following the pre-ripped cut through the driveway. After completion of cable placement, flatten driveway cut with the line ward and rake over. Tree roots may also present a problem on some jobs and will require the use of our root blade. Using the line ward as a portable saw, it is possible to cut through the obstructing roots both below and at ground level. Remember, to maintain root blade sharpness, limit the use of the root blade specifically to the problem area. Do not use the root blade in place of the ripper blade. This segment will cover boring procedures using the optional line ward boring attachment. Our job will require a driveway bore in order to replace a section of damaged 500 feeder cable. After inspecting the job site and determining the best location for the bore, you will need to dig a receiving hole or finishing trench. Here, we show our optional line ward trenching attachment doing the job. The trenching attachment is capable of digging a trench approximately 3 inches wide and 24 inches deep. The receiving trench will make it possible to observe the boring bit as it exits from beneath the driveway and to provide access to attach the retriever bit, as we will demonstrate later. The receiving trench may be dug to the operator's desired length and depth. For this job, we'll be placing a length of poly pipe to be used as conduit beneath the driveway to ease installation. After you complete the receiving trench, you must now dig the starting trench on the opposite side of the driveway. This trench should be as deep as the desired bore and at least 8 to 12 feet in length. Making sure that the trench is deep enough and long enough will allow adequate room for flexing of the boring rods so they will enter the starting hole on a level plane. After trenching has been completed, the trencher is removed and the boring unit is attached. With the engine turned off, slide the boring unit onto the mounting plate, seating firmly in place. Attach the belt to the outer groove of the engine pulley and close the belt guard. Insert the balance wheel and tighten in place. Attach 15 feet of boring rod, always making sure the button assemblies lock in place. Attach the appropriate bit and prepare for hole entry. Here we are using the mole or compaction bit. Certain ground conditions may warrant using the carbide rock bit also included with your boring attachment. Remember, always stay clear of all rotating parts. Using the rod guide, your assistant should pilot the first 5 to 10 feet of rod into the hole, ensuring that the rods are both level and in line with the desired boring path. This is most important in order to achieve an accurate bore. Starting straight and level should allow you to finish that way. Remember, when boring, select the lowest ground speed possible and keep the throttle speed reduced. As the bore proceeds, more rod must be added. To prevent excessive rod flexing, it is recommended that no more than 15 feet of rod be exposed at any one time. Your assistant continues to guide and monitor the boring rods as boring proceeds. After a sufficient amount of rod, almost equal to the length of the bore, has been pushed beneath the driveway, have your assistant monitor the receiving trench to watch for the exiting bolt bit. Frequently, vibrations from the rotating rods and bit can be heard and felt as they approach the receiving trench. Once the bit has been located after entering the receiving trench, it will be necessary to dig a small trench perpendicular to the original to allow for removal of the bit. Rotate the rods to a position which will allow easy access to the locking button. Shut engine off at this point and shift machine into reverse gear. Remove the boring bit and attach the retriever, making sure that the button is firmly locked in place. Attach the line ward steel grip to the pipe by using a propane torch to slightly heat and expand the pipe for easy insertion of the grip. Always insert the grip fully into the pipe. Connect the grip to the retriever using the Quick Connect link. Because the line ward boring unit operates in a forward mode, the retriever is fitted with reverse threading to assist in the removal of the boring rods. After attaching the retriever, start your machine and engage the boring unit. Using low reverse, adjust throttle speed to conditions. As you slowly back your line ward, have your assistant guide the pipe or cable to prevent kinkage. After the retriever has entered the starting trench, the boring rods can be disengaged and the pipe can continue to be pulled to desired length. Disconnect the quick link and remove the steel grips. Now that the bore has been completed, We have inserted the feeder cable through the poly pipe and have attached the cable to the pull blade using a Chinese finger type holding device. After burying a section of feeder cable from the starting trench to the pedestal, we are now burying the final section of cable to the splice point. Upon reaching this area, we raise the pull blade to the transport position and continue pulling beyond the splice point in order to remove the loop of excess cable. The assistant guides the cable to prevent any kinkage. As compared with the job on the left, done with other equipment by a contractor, our job, completed with the line ward, will require almost no lawn restoration. This will save time and money and should also make the customer happy. Fill in your trenches and rake over lightly to complete your job.